Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Donald Trump has nominated a Conservative judge, Neil Gorsuch, to fill a vacancy on the US Supreme Court, the highest judicial authority. If confirmed by the Senate, his appointment could have far-reaching consequences for some of America's most contested social issues, from abortion to gun control. Here's our North America editor, John Sopel.
Forget the humdrum way a Supreme Court pick is normally announced. This is the Donald Trump White House, and it was all geared for primetime television. Every network taking the announcement live, tension building through the day. But now, it was showtime.
So was that a surprise? Was it?
Politicians come and go, but Neil Gorsuch, a Conservative with impeccable legal credentials and flanked by his British wife, has just been handed a job for life to the most powerful court in the land.
Standing here in a house of history and acutely aware of my own imperfections, I pledge that if I am confirmed, I will do all my powers permit to be a faithful servant of the Constitution and laws of this great country.
Last night there were protests against his appointment outside the Supreme Court. This will become a political dogfight, for sure. Not least because the vacancy came up a year ago, but Republicans refused point blank to even meet Barack Obama's nominee. Now Democrats are promising to be equally belligerent.
I have very serious doubts that Judge Neil Gorsuch is up to the job.
In the meantime, the Supreme Court nominee is on a charm offensive, touring the Capitol, glad-handing, offering reassurance. And Donald Trump is impatient to get things done quickly. He had this advice for the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell.
If we end up with the same gridlock that they've had in Washington for the last longer than 8 years, in all fairness to President Obama, a lot longer than 8 years. But if we end up with that gridlock, I would say, if you can, Mitch, go nuclear.
The Supreme Court gets to vote on all the most contentious issues in American society: gun control, abortion law, gay rights, and who knows, maybe soon, Donald Trump's controversial immigration ban. For many voting Republican last November, it wasn't about Donald Trump. He was a means to an end, the end being keeping the Supreme Court in conservative control. And it could become even more conservative. Two of the more liberal justices are now quite elderly. Justice Breyer is 78, Ruth Bader Ginsburg 83. If President Trump gets to choose their replacements, the political complexion of the Supreme Court will have changed dramatically. And that in turn could result in massive change to the social fabric of America. John Sopel, BBC News, Washington.
Here, the Prime Minister defended her dealings with Donald Trump today, accusing Labour of insulting the UK's most important ally. Labour's leader Jeremy Corbyn attacked Mrs May over her response to Mr Trump's immigration crackdown. Our deputy political editor John Pienaar watched the exchanges.
Anger this week against that US travel ban on mainly Muslim countries. Anger too at Theresa May's hesitation before adding her voice to the criticism. But today the Prime Minister made her disapproval plain.
We wouldn't do it. In 6 years as Home Secretary, I never introduced such a policy. We believe it is divisive and wrong.
She insisted she wasn't told about the ban by Donald Trump or its effects on British travellers beforehand. But Labour's leader wanted his invitation to a state visit cancelled.
Just what more does the President Trump have to do before the Prime Minister will listen to the 1.8 million people who've already called for his state visit invitation to be withdrawn?
Theresa May wasn't giving way on that, just the opposite.
Let's just see what he would have achieved in the last week. Would he have been able to protect British citizens from the impact of the executive order? No. Would he have been able to lay the foundations of a trade deal? No. Would he have got a 100% commitment to NATO? No. He can lead a protest. I'm leading a country.
The attacks, the mockery of opponents calling her Teresa the Appeaser might have been blunted had she come down harder against the travel ban from the start. Getting close to Donald Trump and avoiding the odium that he attracts, it's a fine balancing act. It's a safe bet she'll have future opportunities to work on her balance. Others don't mind critical reviews for defending the president, Nigel Farage least of all.
Trump is motivated by protecting the United States of America from Islamic terrorism, whereas what has happened in this room and in governments around Europe is you have welcomed these people into your own homes.
Here, MPs can only wait for the next cause to condemn or defend Donald Trump. No one expects a long wait. John Pienaar, BBC News, Westminster.
Now, Donald Trump says he wants an elegant and dignified confirmation process for the man he's nominated to the Supreme Court. And he's threatened Democrats who try to block Neil Gorsuch. He could use the nuclear option, force a simple majority vote. If he's confirmed, Judge Gorsuch will restore the Conservative majority on the court with a say on key issues from abortion rights to gun control. Let's go live now to Washington to our correspondent, Kylie Morris. Kylie.
John, before we talk about the Supreme Court nomination, I should just mention something that's just happened at the White House briefing, where the National Security Advisor, Mike Flynn, has made a kind of sudden appearance, and he's come out to talk in very tough terms about Iran. He's come and criticised Iran in strong terms over its testing on Sunday of a medium-range ballistic missile and a Houthi attack on a Saudi naval vessel, presumably off Yemen. This is what he had to say.
The Trump administration condemns such actions by Iran that undermine security, prosperity, and stability throughout and beyond the Middle East, and which places American lives at risk. As of today, we are officially putting Iran on notice. Thank you.
Now, we don't have any further clarity on exactly what that means, but clearly America is watching. America is displeased. Iran should know that tough talk on Iran was a key issue in the Donald Trump campaign, as was appointing a conservative Supreme Court justice. He did that last night in Trumpian style and is now telling Republican leaders in Congress to do whatever it takes to ensure that his nominee is appointed. The president just couldn't help himself.
I would like to ask Judge Gorsuch and his wonderful wife Louise to please step forward.
Never one to turn down a reality TV opportunity.
Here they come. Here they come.
He revealed America's new Supreme Court justice live on television like a season winner from Survivor.
So was that a surprise? Was it?
He declared himself delighted and hoped everyone else would be too, that he'd chosen just the kind of conservative judge that he'd promised.
Millions of voters said this was the single most important issue to them when they voted for me for president. I am a man of my word.
The appointment of Neil Gorsuch to replace Justice Antonin Scalia, who died last year, has delighted Republicans. They wanted a nominee who'd strictly interpret the Constitution, and that's exactly what they have.
A judge who likes every outcome he reaches is very likely a bad judge, stretching for results he prefers rather than those the law demands.
This is probably the most hopeful march that I've been a part of.
For those who joined last week's pro-life march in Washington, Donald Trump's Supreme Court pick was a key test.
That literally was my reason for voting for Trump, was a Supreme Court nominee. I want whoever he chooses to be as a pro-life.
Marching to oppose abortion rights, many wanted a conservative appointee who might help to overturn Roe versus Wade, the precedent-setting case that legalized abortion in the U.S.
Obviously, we would love to see Roe v. Wade overturned and continue this country in a direction that honors all life from beginning to end, from the moment of conception to the moment of natural death.
There'll be more arm wrestling ahead, though, to get this through Congress. Democrats, wounded by the Republican refusal to even hold hearings for President Obama's nominee, will move to prevent the appointment.
It's a very hostile appointment.
They wanted a consensus nominee and criticised the judge's record.
If you breathe air, drink water, eat food, take medicine, or in any other way interact with the courts, this is a very bad decision. well outside the mainstream of American legal thought.
In the Roosevelt Room today, President Trump thanked those who worked with him on the appointment.
He's a very dignified man. I'd like to see him go through a dignified process.
No one at the table could stop smiling, from the guy from the National Rifle Association to televangelists and tax reformers. Grins all round as guns, God and gross profits help guide this president to his biggest hire yet, a judge for the highest court in the land.
It seems more than 12 days since President Trump's inauguration and the new normal arrived in US politics. So how's he going down? Well, you can look at the polls. The approval ratings are not spectacularly good, but even better than polls, you can talk to people, particularly those who voted for him. Yalda Hakim is in Pennsylvania trying to find out what the voters are making of it all.
Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump's heartland.
I think it's going fantastic.
I was heartbroken and, like I said, appalled. I can't believe that I thought our country has progressed so much and then we took like 3 steps back.
We have to stand up to other countries. We can't cower to other countries. We have to make America great again. This is our country first.
It was Rust Belt counties like this, facing a decline in manufacturing, shrinking population and rising immigration, that moved heavily towards Donald Trump and his message of national restoration during the election. In his first week and a half in office, we've come here to ask people what they think now. The 4th Street Bar in Hazleton, owned and run by Marty Bacone.
He resonated with the working class. I mean, this is a blue-collar town. You have a lot of industry here, hard-working people. Everybody who comes to this place punches a time clock. That's pretty much the way it is.
Marty welcomes Donald Trump's tough stance on immigrants.
It's a privilege to come to the United States. And I don't mean that in a way other than that it's not a right to come to the United States. That's the price of what freedom is in the United States. If it takes a year, it takes 2 years, that's what the price of living in this country is. We have freedom here.
It's a topic many people here feel strongly about.
I'm very apprehensive, and they are volatile countries. You have to be apprehensive. You have to be. If we're letting you in, it's like, you know, pay your dues like my ancestors did, like anybody else's did. They sat at Ellis Island for days because they wanted to be part of this country. Don't think that you deserve the right. I mean, I don't go over there.
Jessica Rodriguez, who works at the bar, is one of the few people in this town who didn't vote for Donald Trump.
I'm appalled by it, actually. I don't think that it's right, and I think it's unconstitutional. People have been becoming more and more outspoken about their racism. I mean, I've heard things in this bar being said, that racial slurs that I haven't heard. I've lived here my whole life and I haven't heard probably ever, and they're just very outspoken about it because they think it's okay to use hate speech and hate language and hate people, and I'm not about that, you know.
On the face of it, the new policy seems straightforward. Immigrants from 7 predominantly Muslim countries have been restricted from entering the United States for 90 days. Some have viewed this as a ban on Muslims. Across the county, in the town of Wilkes-Barre, at the local jewelry shop, we meet Glenn Ellsworth.
A lot of people are also saying that Muslims are targeted, that this is a Muslim ban.
Yeah, once again, I think you got to start somewhere. And you look at 9/11, you look at Osama bin Laden, you look at even the Boston massacre, the terrorist attack in Boston. They were all Muslim. I mean, it's hard that you have to categorize that specific people into that categorization, but I think it's a start.
Do you think it's creating division, though, in America?
I think they've done that, not us.
Because there are a lot of Muslims who live in this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh yeah, there definitely is, but once again, I think they've done that. We haven't done that. That's just their brand, the brand that they're portraying.
Rania. Nice to meet you. Thank you
Rania.
so much for having us.
Absolutely.
Rania Nedov is a Syrian American and was born and raised in Wilkes-Barre. She feels Donald Trump's stricter immigration policy is counterproductive.
Definitely a Muslim man. There's no question. I don't know how else you could call it something, what else you could call it. But worse than that, I feel it's against every principle that the country was, our country was built on. When you divide, you create more confusion, nor mistrust, maybe hatred, between two different kind of people who were brought up totally differently. So now, how is that going to prevent terrorism as opposed to create more?
As Donald Trump attempts to shake things up, his hardline policies seem to be continuing to resonate with many people.
Yalda Hakim there in Pennsylvania.